very quickly about this article that I came across from Bazaar. You know, I get Apple News, and I subscribe to all different types of news, including like fashion and lifestyle. Oh, GPS, leave me alone. Okay, I might have to stop this because GPS is going to keep talking. But I like to have my GPS on in the morning because just, you know, Atlanta traffic is always trafficking, and I never know when I need to be rerouted. So, exit right. Girl, I know how to get onto the entrance. Anyway, so I'm gonna try to talk over her, and then of course I'm gonna edit some of this out. I apologize. But I wanted to talk about this article because it stuck with me the first time I read it, and I was like, okay, we gotta talk about this because you guys, if you're my people, and I'm sure you are, you know, we know a few things about not just fashion but pop culture in general, right? So I came across this article. Oh, happy Eagles Day! Aren't we so happy that the Eagles won? I know everybody wanted history to be made, and history is great, but I always root for the underdog. I don't know, it's just me. Like, I didn't have a dog in the fight, but I like a good, and here's the thing though, like, Philly was not like the underdog. Not like they came in there really slugging it out. But they sure did thug it out. It was such a good game. Okay, so anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. I came across this article in Bazaar, and it's entitled "Why It's So Hard to Create a Black Sex in the City." Okay, so that immediately got my attention, you know, got the wheels turning, because I'm like, okay, yeah, I got some ideas too. I got some opinions. The article was written by, let me see if I can remember this, Bianca Betancourt. So I left the article feeling like I don't really know if they gave us anything new, if I learned anything. Like, I like to read articles because I want to learn something, right? Not just to engage the piece and, you know, kind of have a back and forth, like, argument. Like, I don't really feel like I went away learning anything, or more importantly, because it's an opinion piece, I don't feel like I left feeling like slightly convinced, right, about the argument. So before I get into the points made in the article and then my opinions about those points, I want you guys to maybe read the article before, so you can have an opinion if you want to, rather. I'm gonna put the title up, the link in the description, read it, and then come back, right? Okay, but whatever. So basically, I don't even really know. I guess the premise is that of all the black women shows, or the shows about black women, none of them have been like quite like Sex in the City. And so on its face, for me, that in of itself is problematic, because, I mean, the argument that one thing is not like the other is pretty obvious. Like, of course you're not going to be able to recreate the same thing unless you are intentionally trying to recreate the same thing, right? For example, if they were doing a reboot, you know, like 10 years, 20 years later, of a show, of a classic show, like the Wonder Years, right? When they did the reboot of the Wonder Years with the all-black cast, and I think it was it on Hulu? It was on Hulu. I loved it. I thought it was so cute. It was just such a wholesome, cute story. You know, you got civil rights stuff going on with it, but just like really wholesome. It was kind of like Everybody Hates Chris, you know, meets the Watsons are going to Birmingham or something like that. Like, it was just a cute story. Anyway, so that's an argument to be made about whether, you know, the black version lived up to the original. Okay, but to compare Sex in the City to anything, black, white, or other, to me is an exercise in futility. Like, I don't do things to waste time, and so I would not necessarily write an argument piece with that premise in mind, that why it's so hard to create a black version of Sex. Because did anyone set out to actually create like a black Sex in the City? Like, they're calling it Sex in the City, and it's basically the same 4 women, drop them in the same city, basically give them the same or very similar storylines, character. Like, no one's attempted to do, as far as I know. I mean, I haven't seen that. So already, for me, that premise fell apart, like, right out the gate. So the writer starts with the obvious whatabouts, right? Because the first thing you're gonna say is like, well, what about Girlfriends? What about Insecure? One of the things they didn't mention, but I liked, was what about Single Ladies? Y'all remember that with Lisa Ray and what's her name? What's the girl that people canceled? Oh my goodness, it's gonna from Clueless. What is her name? Okay, what's her brother? Damon Dash, Stacey Dash. Okay, Stacey Dash. And there was another woman, I think it was a white actress. Anyway, that was a good show. Whenever I watched it. I don't know today. You know how you like things in the past and then you watch it again, then your sensibilities are different. So who knows? But it was a good show when it was out. So immediately you go to the whatabouts. And so the writer addresses those. And I think that in the opening, she makes some really good points about the difference between the introduction of Girlfriends, which I think would be kind of like the most direct comparison between Sex and the City, is that Girlfriends aired on UPN. You guys remember UPN? Whereas Sex and the City was HBO. And that was, you know, when HBO was HBO, because now they're not. And, you know, HBO was really the place for prestige TV, where you had series, right? Not shows, because Girlfriends was like a show, right? But HBO had series that all felt like movies. Anyway, so when we talk about prestige TV, right? Like, the episodes are not like episodic, and they're not like very kind of like a sitcom, whereas Girlfriend kind of felt like a sitcom. I don't even remember if Girlfriend had a laugh track. Did it have a laugh? It might have started with a laugh track, but whatever. Anyway, HBO and its lineup of prestige TV, every episode felt like a chapter, right? Think Sopranos, think Oz. Oh my goodness, I used to love Oz. The Wire, of course, right? And so Sex and the City, and there's so many, of course, Game of Thrones. I love Boardwalk Empire, Entourage, right? Like, so every episode felt like a chapter. And the reason why is because most of these series that I could think of that I've just they actually started out as novels, and if not novel series. So it makes sense, right? Anyway, and the way it's filmed and edited, and the lighting and the dark and all of that stuff, right? That's what makes it prestige TV. And so HBO could do that, right? UPN could not. But Girlfriend set out to create a show about 4 black women, successful in their own various ways, who are navigating life, dating, of course, friendships, and family. So that's a direct comparison. So the article then compares, which I thought was interesting, because the article referenced Insecure. And the thing about Insecure is that it is probably the closest version to a Sex and the City, because of course it's on HBO, and it was a huge cultural phenomenon, just like Sex and the City was, right? It did feel very sort of novel, movie, cinematic. It had a very cinematic feel to it. Think about the lighting of Insecure. Even though Sex and the City was bright and well lit, it was like, you know, it just made you feel excited about the city and all the happenings and goings on with the ladies, right? Okay, what I do like, and I think it's a really good, if you're gonna seriously do a comparison of Insecure and Sex and the City, is to really do a deep analysis of the lead women. So one of the things that was so great about Carrie Bradshaw was that even though she was living this fabulous life in New York City, she was very humble, and we didn't even know it at the time, but she was kind of like an influencer. So she didn't really have a lot of money, but she had access to people with money, right? So we could relate to her on that level because, you know, she wasn't this sort of, she didn't have this unattainable life that we couldn't relate to. She had a humble apartment, even though it's New York. It was the Upper East Side. Very expensive, right? Most of us were already priced out of that. Like, then, now, past, present, all of the things. But just from appearance's sake, like, it's like, okay, her apartment is cute, you know, shabby chic, cute. I could do that. I'm doing that. I could do everything she's doing. And her fashion, while it was flawless, it was high, it was low, it was all the things, it was attainable. I remember feeling like this is the first time that I had ever found like a TV movie sort of icon that really represented like, oh, this person is a fashion icon, because not only do I like their style, but it's very accessible, attainable, and you can be doing a lot without doing much. So I remember, you know, she was notorious for like this sort of vintage, poofy, furry, collared coats and things like that. And I remember the first one that I got like that, got it from a thrift store when I was away at college. Like, just simple things like that. And once I had that coat, like, I just knew that I was channeling my inner Carrie Bradshaw. Like, I went to, like, she kind of inspired me to go to thrift stores, because it was, her style was not something that you could replicate from just going to Macy's or the Gap, right? Like, you would take one of the classic pieces that you would get from, you know, any one of those stores, but then you had to go to a thrift store to find something quirky to go with it. You had to. And she made it okay. Like, I remember I would wear like a maxi dress with an Adidas track jacket, like things like that. She just made that cool and made it so accessible to everyone. So, but again, this was way before social media, way before anybody could be influencing people in, you know, in that sort of like mass produced way. And that's what made that show so great, right? So Insecure was not about the fashions at all, right? Not, you know, Molly had pretty decent style because, you know, she was a high-powered lawyer. Issa Rae came into her fashion later on in the seasons, and that's one of the points made by the writer in the article, as she started making more money. If we go back to Girlfriends, I mean, Joan was probably the only one. No, Tony kind of had some fashion too, again, because Tony had like a high-powered job. Joan, I mean, come on now, Tracy Ellis Ross, you know, she was giving it. She could have been on Sex and the City. Like, you know how like sometimes you're like, please, we don't need a token. We rather y'all just keep it organic, keep it the way it was supposed to be, or the way it naturally is. You don't need to add a black person or a person of color just to say you're doing that, because then it doesn't feel right? Like, we know this person did not, like, y'all didn't grow up together, y'all don't really hang out together. Like, don't do that. But Joan Clayton, she would have fit in there perfectly, right? And it has nothing to do with being black, white, how you talk, how you sound. Like, she just has this, like, to me, a universal appeal, right? And I feel like she's the type of person where she is so used to being so individually herself that she can easily float in and out of all different cultural settings. But at the same time, she probably always just feels uniquely herself and like never has to like feel like a chameleon, you know. And in some ways it feels too like you don't quite fit in your head. You feel like that because I don't necessarily talk like these people sound. I haven't had these experiences or that, whatever. But like, you are just showing up authentically yourself. And I think that because she's so quirky and obviously funny and smart and beautiful and fashionable is not even a good word to describe people. What the heck sound was that? To describe people like Tracy Ellis Ross and Sarah Jessica Parker. Like, I don't know, what are they? They're like goddesses when it comes to that stuff. Like, fashionable. Like, this is fashionable. That's not what they are. It's like, seriously. But anyway, so she could have fit in perfectly on that show, but then who would have been Carrie? Who would have been Joan? You know what I mean? But anyway,